Hello and welcome to the deep dive exploration of the 𝗘𝗾𝗂𝗏 2014 German film, The Samurai. So this video is accompanying a spoiler-free review, but I did, like I said in that video, I did want to talk about this one in a little bit more of a spoilery fashion, and I really couldn't figure out a way to dance around wording and so on and so forth. I did mention that this was an allegory for the character of Jacob, the small town police officer, as he's doing this cat and mouse game with the samurai, wreaking havoc upon the town and so on and so forth, that it was largely allegorical and had a lot of subtext as far as Jacob reconciling his own sexuality. So just a fair warning, this video is going to be chock full of spoilers. I'm not going to hold back on describing anything or talking about any plot point within. So if you haven't seen this movie, you don't want it spoiled, stop now, please. There was a whole lot within the imagery of this movie that I found extremely compelling and heartbreaking, and just heartfelt, in all honesty. So a lot could be said as far as, the allegorical nature of this and the subtext of what stands for what and what somebody's interpretation of this is. And I think that, this is the kind of movie that allows for those theories to run rampant. And I love that. I love that kind of, post-credit sequence conversation and argument and so on and so forth. So I kind of wanted to just come to the table with my interpretation as far as a lot of the imagery within this film. I think a lot of people will attribute Jacob's sexuality to the imagery of the samurai himself and all of the conflicts that are happening within, all the struggles and so on. And I think that is, I don't agree with it. I think that it's close, but not quite there. And there are some plotline, that top surface level elements of characters' motivations and characters' choices that kind of betray that theory. Most notably, the violence that the samurai undergoes in the third act after Jacob embraces him and dances with him. You'd think that would be kind of the climactic overtone that would calm the storm. This is the ultimate path and the ultimate journey that the samurai has been trying to take him on, now finally realized. But then violence continues ensuing from there until Jacob kills the samurai in the end. So to me, the interpretation that I took away from this was that the samurai was not Jacob's sexuality. The samurai was more indicative of Jacob's id, his angry, unrelenting, true self. The side of himself that he has felt tug at the steering wheel, but he has been reluctant all his life to turn the keys over to. As far as his sexuality, I think that's representative in the katana itself, the samurai sword. I think it was something that was represented by the fact that the samurai had the sword delivered to him. It wasn't that the samurai simply showed up and had the sword, which would have been very easy in the narrative sense and would have been extremely plausible. Nobody would have thought about it any two different which ways if he was just simply showing up and having the sword. He's the samurai, fine. Instead, the sword got delivered to Jacob, who then put it in the hands of the samurai. And I think that has some symbology there, not the least of which also the fact that Jacob's real moment was when he killed the samurai, but at that point, he took possession of the sword. And that was something that also kind of happened at that moment when he finally danced with the samurai. Yes, his path was over, but that's not to say that the journey of his angry, id, internalized self was over. He simply took possession of his own sexuality and then had to wrangle the demons within, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I kind of hope it does. We all have that side of ourselves that kind of metastasizes. It's that deep, dark, hidden down place where we're angry and so on, and without addressing it, without confronting it, without almost embracing it in its own odd way and finding a way to live with it, we tend to just let it explode all at once. Sorry for any imagery there. And I think that was what was happening with Jacob. In light of his repressed sexuality and his repressed urges and so on, it was something that he wasn't embracing. It was something that he was scared of and pushed down and always tried to chase away and make and subdue. And we see a lot of that in the imagery of this film, like when the samurai is interacting with 𝗘𝗾𝗂𝗶𝗽𝗺, she slowly, reluctantly becomes scared of him and then eventually doesn't recognize him, which is a common fear that if we do fully embrace ourselves, our true nature and so on, will we scare the people that we love? Will we even be recognizable to them at all? Especially something as identifiable on a personal level as our own sexuality. If we come out, will the people that we love still love us? If we come out, will the people that we love even recognize us anymore? It's a valid and terrible fear. It's one of those things that Jacob has continually pushed down until it finally reached the surface level. It finally exploded and it finally had to deal with it. So that's my interpretation of it. I could be completely wrong. I fully admit that, but I would love to hear your thoughts. If you have a different idea of what was going on in this movie, if you have a different theory and you want to, support that with any kind of, scene or imagery or character choice, anything like that, I would love to hear from you. Please leave comments in the description below. This is a great movie for discussion, and discussion is what I would love to see. So I think that should about wrap this one up. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.